This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about the Green New Deal. We have a very special show for you today, so pay attention. Because I often say there's three sides to every coin: heads, tails, and the edge. And you stand on the head side and the tail side saying you're wrong and all this. Our job is to stand on the edge and see both sides. And so what we're going to talk about today comes from this thing here. It's called the ESB and the I. Again, there's always three sides. Two sides, edge, this. So most people here are E's, go to school, get a job, or S's, become doctors, lawyers, or accountants. But on this side was my rich dad side, and this is big business, 500 employees or more, and I stands for inside investor. The difference here is this: these guys on this side invest from the outside. They're called stocks, bonds, mutual funds. They're outside the deal. They're already a security. They come from the stock market. They come from Wall Street. So the 401k, the RRSP, and all that, that's what these guys invest in. And what my rich dad taught me to do was invest from this side. So I'm always doing my best to invest as a business guy, hundreds of employees, 500 employees is the number, and I stands for insider. So today we're going to be talking about the inside. For those of you who have played the CASHFLOW board game, we have the rat race. And as you know, I give the teachers a lot of grief as these guys, they get stuck in the rat race. They have a job and all this. They pay a lot of taxes. They're always afraid of being fired if they don't take a COVID test or something like this. I just wouldn't want to live that way, but that's what our schools teach people to do. On this side here is the fast track. And the fast track is where the insiders and these guys invest here. So that's why the Rich Dad Company was formed, to teach the differences, between why some people get rich and why most people don't. As my rich dad often said, there's a million ways to financial heaven and a billion ways to financial hell. And there's a lot of guys going to financial hell right now because we're in such turmoil. So our guest today is a very special friend, guest and all this. He operates out of the frozen north. One of my favorite parts of the world, Vancouver, British Columbia. It's where the Frito Banditos hang out. I spent so many years up there learning about deals and this and that and learning who's good, who's bad, how many bullshit artists there are and all that. And it was one of the best educations I've ever had onto this side here, the B and the I side. And his name is Marin Katusa. For full disclosure, I do invest with him. We've made a lot of money together. But Marin is definitely on this side here. And you have to be what's called an accred. You have to be rich to invest with him. So don't just call him up and say, I got $10,000. He can't help you, because that's against the law. But we have a very special story today to talk about, because if you've been paying attention, this COVID test thing, or whatever, the vaccine and all this, the truck drivers in Eastern Canada are revolting. They're just revolting. They're going crazy, and I'm cheering them on. I'm on my tweet going, go for them, truckers, go for them, truckers. And now the government of Canada wants to shut down the truckers, so they have an anti-honking law now. They're getting more fascist, fascist. If you scratch a liberal, they bleed fascism. They claim they want you to be free, but they're really a bunch of fascists. And so it's an interesting time. So Marin Katusa and I are going to be talking about the more crazy it gets, the more opportunities there are. And we're going to be talking today about one of my people I love to despise. Her name is AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and her mob, or whatever they call them. And they're a bunch of hardcore, liberal, Marxist communists. They hate capitalism. They hate the rich. Ocasio-Cortez, she's a good-looking young woman, but she sits on her brains, if you know what I mean. I cannot believe how uneducated she is. I think she served coffee at one time. But she knows nothing about taxes, and she's saying tax the rich. I'm going, holy mackerel. She's a Marxist. But they don't know that because they don't teach us in school. But the good thing about it, as our subject today is about, the more nuts it gets, the more opportunities there are. And so our guest today is a friend. He's the best-selling author, The Rise of America, and he is one of the most successful young guys in financing of resources, gold, silver, and stuff like this all over the world. And he's going to be talking about how nuts it is right now, especially in Eastern Canada, where they're going after the truck drivers. But all that does is create more opportunities for everybody. So he's a friend of mine, Marin Katusa. So welcome to the program, Marin.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Would you give us a little bit of your background, please? I mean, you're a young guy, but I don't know how you've gotten so big so fast and so way down the road.
Well, thank you for calling me young. I'm going to remind my wife that when I get home tonight. So after 20 years, I started actually on the left side of your chart, right? I started as a calculus teacher and born and raised. Luckily, I was born and raised here in Vancouver. And Vancouver is the epicenter of resource finance globally. Correct. So I got in early days because, like you're saying, I'd look around and I was known as the tutor for the rich. You know, when all the rich people needed help with their kids in calculus, I was the guy that they would call because in 4 hours I could teach them what they learned in 4 months for their exam. And I also did this thing where I guarantee you a B or higher, you get your money back. And people thought I was crazy, but it worked because I was able to speak the language of these kids, not the technical lingo that the profs would use. So I look at these houses and go, what the hell am I doing wrong here? You know, I've got scholarships and honors and a couple of degrees at that time. And I continued to get more degrees after. I'm like, this sucks. Like, what am I doing wrong? I could never get ahead. And then really one of the dads said, you know, did you ever think of maybe leaving teaching? I'd like to hire you. And I was like, well, what do you do? You know, and then I learned about the stock market. And had no idea. Like, think about this, advanced math and the sciences through university, never was there anything mentioned of what these skill sets were used in, you know, to make money. It was always to get a job for, you know, become, like you say, the golden handcuffs in life. So being in Vancouver, it was the resource sector. I met up early with a couple of the big players. They saw my skill set, lived on the road, and lo and behold, you know, almost 20 years later, here I am. So I was lucky enough to get with some of the legends in the business, like the late Jim O'Rourke, who's a Canadian Hall of Famer, built more open pit copper mines than anyone else in Canada. And he became, he liked my style and he became my mentor. And together we founded and built Canada's third largest producing copper mine with one of my former professors for geology, Dr. Mark Buston. I convinced him to leave the university, and we did something called Quadrilla, which became Europe's largest shale play. Lord Brown, who used to run BP, is now the chair of that, and Centric and Riverstone, some of the biggest funds in the world, are shareholders of that. So I guess by going out there, and like you said, becoming I lived on the road, I made massive sacrifices. Like you can't do this and then turn off your phone at 4:00 to go play with your buddies and go to the bar and go to watch the football and basketball and soccer and hockey. Massive sacrifices take. But I guess what I've really come to the conclusion is to make the best bang for your buck is to de-risk the assets and increase the odds in your favor. So that's kind of been my framework.
Right. And that's another thing that we say. We have a book, Marin, says why A students work for C students. Yeah. Because as you know, most of the guys you work for are not even half as smart as you, even academically.
And it's a different skill set. You know, when I look back at it growing up, and I would say that in most industries, right? Yeah. Specifically in the unions, unions based off of Peter's principle and how much time you've invested. But even in the entrepreneurial world, I can say that in the resource sector where there's some brilliant people, but they're scared to take risks. And I understand that and appreciate it. But when you have the odds tilted to your favor, you do need to take risk to make the big score.
But you also have to have very smart people. Do you know what I mean? Most entrepreneurs, it's like my teacher's name was Frank, and he's the reason I was in Vancouver. And he always asks me something. He says, how did you get so far? You don't know anything. He says, you'll make a great entrepreneur because if you don't know anything, at least you know you don't know anything.
Yep.
Do you know? And I don't mind asking for help. I was always asking smart guys. I did all the way through school. You know, my favorite instructor was the girl who sat next to me. I mean, without her, I'd never passed any of those tests. I call it cooperation. The teacher called it cheating, but that's what we do in the real world. So the entrepreneur gets out there and he finds the smartest people possible.
And for different skill sets. So, for example, about 8 months ago, I went to an underground mine, which ended up becoming the highest grade producing gold mine in the world. And there's a geology part that I didn't understand. So what did I do? I phoned up for that specific type of geology, who I thought was the best in the world and the most experienced. And he was so interested in it because that's what his specialty is. It's like taking the best soccer player in the world and asking him to play basketball. He ain't going to do it. He's going to have no interest. But if you ask him to play with other all-stars in soccer, he'll love to do it. And then the best part of it, Robert, is he was so into it that he wanted to invest his money in and make it a big bet. Then you're like, ooh, there's something here. So that's how you can really get going in the sector.
Because it's a cooperative venture is what it is.
Correct.
And different. So over here, the B and the I side are the C students. You know, I call them the capitalists. They don't, but they know they don't know. That is one of the biggest things I've met when I meet some of the biggest guys, who are putting deals together. They know they don't know. And when I talk to some of these guys over here, like the school teachers, they have to know. And they have almost a survival skill. I've got to be the smart. I've got to be the smartest. But the reason A students work for C students is C students know they don't know. That's called humility. And so that's why when whoever it was came across you're a calculus teacher, you can speak, you need it because you're part of this bigger picture. And I think that's one of the biggest shortcomings of school, because my poor dad was a PhD, from Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern. But I said PhD stood for poor, helpless, and desperate, because he had to know everything. And then my rich dad never went to school, but he always hired the smartest people he knew. And that's the difference. One is called cooperative, and the other one is just have to be the smartest. So I'm honored to always hang out with guys like Marin, because when I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, bumping around, talking to all these guys, putting deals together, most of them are liars, right? I mean, they're bullshit artists. But it was the best education I could have, because I could sit there and listen to them. And, most of them were on this side over here putting these deals together, but there were gaping holes in the deal. And that's why guys like Marin would come in and fill in the holes. And that's when I got to understand what Marin does. And like it says, he now has one of the biggest gold mines in the world. And that's a sad story because, when I was working with Frank, we found the biggest gold mine in the world in China. And we took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And as soon as we struck gold, the Chinese took it from us. It's a thing called country risk. And so that's why when I first met Marin, I said, oh my God, this is my new Frank here. He knows how to put the deal together. He's also a very smart guy. And he's born in Vancouver. I just love that place. So anyway, we're going to talk about how people like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the honking. By the way, what is happening in Ottawa with the truck drivers?
Like even Elon Musk is cheering them on with you. So look, it's a very well organized platform. The medias try to make it like in any protest, you have a couple of idiots who show up with swastikas, but the media was just focusing on that in one aspect. And then the government, the liberals, were focusing on that one aspect. The average truck driver is a really good person. They were actually heroes, because during the pandemic, when there was lockdowns and, the first 5 months of COVID in 2020, there was still food moving around. That was because of the truckers. Right. So they sat there and said, hey, wait a second. We want some, discussions. The government just dismissed them as redneck truckers, and they organized themselves very, very well. And if you actually do a little bit more deeper research, you'll find out many of the people that worked within the Liberal Party are now flipping towards
Correct.
supporting this convoy. So the media is now starting to realize, how do you as a judge make the law to no more honking? And how does the judge say, and the government pass these laws that are outside of the jurisdiction, where you're not allowed to bring fuel anymore to these truckers? They're trying everything. And then the innovative in the organization is the farmers are coming along on their private land, delivering the fuel to these truck drivers. So it's being funded. Like, they had a GoFundMe page. The government tried to take it down. They brought it back up. So it's well organized. How it will end up, I have no idea, but it's real. It's a much bigger momentum than the current establishment expected. And I think what the media didn't expect and what the Liberal Party did not expect is their own starting to publicly state that what they're doing isn't right. So, again, like we were talking before we went live, I look at all of these situations as, catalysts for change. And when you see such bipolar media, bipolar politics, it really is like this. They're trying to create the anti-vaxxers as like the bad guys in the community, not doing their part. And they're trying to suppress the whole individual freedom aspects. And then things that were, conspiracy theory 8 months ago and you'd be taken down on Twitter are now being proven to be true. So why not let people speak? Why not let people make their own decisions?
Right.
I'm a free market guy.
Right.
I believe everyone should have their own choices and be responsible for those choices, including the consequences to those choices. So you look at all these different things, but at the end of the day, for me, the political risk, you mentioned it, you invested in this gold mine, the nationalization of the resources. And that's not just China, Robert. You're seeing it across the board.
Correct.
And yet the media is not picking up on this because they don't want to show what's happening in the left-leaning nations. And this isn't new. In the copper world, people forget that in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So today, Chile and Peru makes up about 40% of the copper in the world for production annually, just those two countries.
And 40%. It's stolen by the government.
And here's the thing. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the Guggenheims went and built and created a monopoly in copper globally, then it became Kennecott, which today is Rio Tinto, second largest mining company in the world. They had those assets in the early 1900s. Then it got nationalized. Then it got denationalized. And now they're doing a new form of nationalization where they bring new taxes and new royalties, and they're changing the posts. All I try to remind investors, this is coming from a guy that's traveled the world and been there and done that. I know everyone in my game in the resource sector. I am now more politically conscious because the way the fund managers and the brokers, they don't assess political risk properly. You're telling me that a project in Africa or Argentina, Turkey should have a 5% discount, meaning they're only discounting the value at a 5% discount. And that's what they're doing for Nevada.
We're getting ahead of the game here. The point here is that Marin's book, his latest book, is called The Rise of America. And this young man puts his money where his books are. So the theme of today's program is how uncertainty actually creates more opportunity. And so I could get upset with AOC and her Green New Deal. Then I meet Marin, and he goes, let's make a lot of money off of AOC. So he starts selling the world carbon credits. So Marin switched me over to become this grainy, and we're selling carbon credits. So explain to the world what carbon credits are.
Well, what's funny about that? Historically, they used to say, this is a gold mine because gold mine was valuable. But what's the color of money? Everyone thinks green, right? So if you think back even more, and what we're doing is good things. And it's because, I was involved in financing America's largest geothermal plant over a decade ago. And I started learning about the sector and I saw where the bond market was going, cost of capital, pollution, and all these different things. And as millennials were getting more powerful in their positions, right, and the boomers were decreasing in their importance, and it's this shift that's going on. You see it in real time. It's just natural demographics. I started realizing that, wait a second, everyone talks about, in the COP21 in 2015 in Paris, it was going to be this, we're going to save the world. You had musicians, Bono and Leonardo DiCaprio, all these good looking people, and the media loved it. The media was all over it, right? Because it wasn't some scientist talking about data like a guy like me that bores people. It was like Leonardo DiCaprio looking into the eyes of a journalist, and they were smitten by it. So they wanted to spend more time. And it became media hits. And they said the right things, but nothing happened, Robert. That's the key. Nothing happened. So even with the unlimited balance sheets of the UN, you're looking at unlimited balance sheets of the EU putting billions of dollars in this sector. You had Hollywood, you had the media and journalists. Why did nothing happen? Because they didn't look at it from a capitalist perspective. If you go back to from 1215 with the Magna Carta, which the fundamentals set the Western world to the trajectory we are today, give the rights to the people. Why is America so great? Why did America beat Russia? Actually, Russia, from a geological standpoint, technical standpoint, its land has just as much gold and copper and oil and natural gas. It's a very
rich country.
Exactly. It's a very rich country, very big country. The people are also smart. They're very strong in academics. The difference was government control versus individual freedoms. And Warren Buffett, one thing that he is 100% true on, never bet against the American spirit. And Elon Musk is in our days, he is the living case study of that. You got to love his style, how he throws his finger to what he thinks is wrong and the bullshit that he has to deal with. And he's now going to be the all-time largest taxpayer, not just in America, but in the world, right? And he's going to keep doing it. He's going to keep innovating. And that is what capitalism, the difference is. So this is the first phase in the environmental movement that it became a theoretical, it became a religious perspective of what they think is right, when the capitalists are coming in and going, no, we're going to make this right because the balance sheet is going to make it.
Right.
And we're all working for the same thing.
And again, that's this side here, the big business and the inside investor. These are the academic elites. These are like Fauci and these guys. They have no right to be making those rules. I mean, Fauci and those guys, they're hardcore academic liberals. And when you scratch a liberal, they bleed fascism. They want to tell you how to run your life. And what Marin was talking about is the Magna Carta. I told him he should change his name to MAGA Carter, make America great again like Trump, and get some capitalism back in there. So that's what Marin and we fell in love with each other, because I spent so much time in Canada listening to more bullshit deals. But those are the guys that are making the world work. And so when AOC came up with this Green New Deal, Marin calls me and says, let's make money off of her. And so when we come back, we'll be talking about how we're making fortunes off of these greenies who are a bunch of socialists, fascists, who want to run the world but telling us what to do, or don't honk your horn and don't give gas to the truckers who are keeping the world going. These academic elites who live in certain places like New York, San Francisco, Oregon, California, Austin, Texas. Those are the guys who are going to make us rich. So when we come back, we'll be talking about how this summer I was sitting in Zimbabwe talking to Marin about putting a carbon deal together while everybody else is crying the blues about COVID. And that's the difference in attitude. So if you've played the cash flow game, it's the fast track. It's not the rat race. And these guys here are stuck in the rat race because they went to school. And it's a very big difference. So Marin made the switch from calculus teacher to the B and the I side. And you've got to have smart people on all sides. We'll be right back.
We hope you enjoyed part 1 of our conversation with Marin Katusa. Join us next week for part 2.